Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in to the next episode of Dip and Deep, where we explore deeper into the experiences of Indian Muslims in Singapore. Now, certainly, our experiences differ from one individual to another. However, what are some common struggles we all face as minorities, and how do they influence our identity? Let's take a look. How would you describe your experiences as a minority within the Muslim community?
For me, that's kind of like I'm somewhere in the middle because I'm not exactly a minority, although I felt like I was treated as one for like a large portion of my life, like growing up. But then at the same time, I am Malay, and there are certain parts of me that are Malay, like how I call my dad's side of the family according to like their age. Like the oldest aunt is like Mak Long or like Pak Long kind of thing. So there are still parts of me that are Malay that I can't dispute. So I'm not exactly fully a minority, but at the same time, I do strongly identify with my Indian identity. So I guess is how I feel. The being treated differently thing comes from both sides. It's like Malays are like, most Malays think like, oh, you're Malay until I tell them that I'm Indian. Then they're like, oh, okay. But then, and like me not understanding a lot of Malay practices kind of thing. And then like from the Indian side, like my friends who grew up in like very traditionally Indian families would be like, oh, but you're not Indian. Then that would make me feel very like questioning my own identity. But like, it's like, who are you to say what I am and what I'm not, you know?
The current times, a lot has changed lah. People are really accepting and they understand how it is. So it's not as bad because all my friends, like they know like, okay, I'm Indian Muslim or Chinese Muslim. So whenever, I think what I'm touched by is they don't always assume that everyone is Malay, and they take cautious effort to always recognize that, okay, we are Muslim, we are not Malays. And I think that touches me lah, because I feel represented, you know. Because as much as, yeah, I understand Malay, and I sometimes don't mind being classified under that Malay group, but end of the day, I want to be represented too, you know. And it feels nice that all my friends are because I have shared my feelings with them, I guess. So, and yeah, so that's why they are putting cautious effort. And when others make the mistake, even before I correct them, they will correct them. So that's nice lah, that's sweet lah, I guess.
It was a lot of me trying to assimilate and not fully being able to appreciate my own culture. I felt like if I wanted to be more Muslim, I had to be more Malay in a way. Which is a very interesting, I would say, I guess, misconception I had as a kid. I don't really know. At the moment on the spot, I don't think I can really figure out how it came about, but I think it was something that I kind of just intrinsically adopted, I guess, as a kid. But thankfully, I kind of like grew out of it as I grew older because I realized that these are two very different things. I think something that was very useful was that in social discourse in Singapore, we were having more conversations about this. I managed to meet people who were very open about their conversations and their experiences as an Indian Muslim or as Indian Muslims, you know. Especially when I was when I was in university, I was talking to more friends who were Indian Muslim and I was learning about their experiences as well. And I started to realize that there's a very, very, very huge difference between like race and religion, which I think in Singapore we tend to conflate very quickly.
You know, being exposed to both cultures, right? So were there instances where you were made to feel very different from, you know, all the peers around you?
I guess it was primarily in madrasah, but it wasn't entirely because I was Indian. It was also because I couldn't speak Malay for a very long time. It's not proficiently or as proficiently as I would like. And even when I got older, like a lot of people said that I had an accent when I spoke in Malay, which I honestly still cannot hear. So I don't know where that's coming from. Little things like microaggressions, I guess. Like there was once that I coincidentally grouped with one of my Indian friends in madrasah, and like our teacher called us like darah keturunan Keling. So I'll translate like darah keturunan means like you're from the bloodline of like Keling, but like Keling has like a bit of different connotations. Some people think it's a neutral term, some people think that it's a derogatory term. But like a lot of Indians are reclaiming the word Keling as well. But yeah, it also is derogatory in the sense that it comes from the sound that anklets make. And I didn't think of it as racist back then, but then like, you know, growing up and understanding like how microaggressions work and everything, that was, I guess, one point that was quite poignant in like, that made me feel separate from my like being treated differently as an Indian Muslim. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Because when I meet new people, right, first off, people will immediately assume that I'm Malay. So like, let's say if this group of, like sometimes, like I said, humans, we like to gravitate to people that we can relate to. So they were, hey bro, you're Malay eh? First question, you're Malay eh? Then I'll be like, okay, should I say yes? Should I say no? If I say yes, I'm not telling the truth. But if I said no, will he like ostracize me, or will he like judge or be less close to me than he initially wanted to? But yeah, so I would say that feeling has not died down yet. It's still a worry that I have in mind. But as much as possible, I do try my best to, because I feel like if I don't take this cautious effort to always represent myself, then when else will us Indian Muslims or like other race Muslims be represented, you know? So I realized that I have to make like all of us, we should be the one trying to implement that change. So regardless, whatever it is, they should learn to accept whatever, like who we are. And so I would just say that, yeah, I'm Indian Muslim or Chinese Muslim. Yeah.
Like we get picked on for like looking a bit different than the norm. I think the rest of it is not necessarily an Indian Muslim experience, more of it as just being an Indian experience, like for the color of our skin. Yeah, we look, I guess, different in the context of the society that we live in, and it's a lot of navigating that, right? So I used to be ashamed of how I looked like, skin color wise, everything, like there's a lot of things about me, but like last time I used to think that it was something to be ashamed of. Now I recognize it's not, it's just my identity. So I was made to feel different, but alhamdulillah, as the years passed, I've learned to embrace that difference, and it's been a blessing.
So how has identifying more with your race affected the sense of belonging to the Indian community?
I think there are definitely mixed feelings there, because there are, as with anything, there are good parts about it and then there are bad parts about it. So I think I do get a sense of feeling left out as a result of identifying more with my, Malay identity than my Indian identity, because I somehow find myself relating a lot more to my Indian Muslim friends. At the same time, I find myself missing out on a lot of references. Even things like food. I can't list more than 5 Indian foods. And that's like embarrassing, as like a Indian Muslim. Like you would think that you would be able to list like more than 5 things, but I can't. Or people would say like a name of an Indian food and it doesn't come to me. Like there's no image in my head, So there are moments like that where I feel I wish I could identify with my Indian Muslim identity more. And I do start questioning whether, does that make me less of an Indian Muslim? When obviously it doesn't, because at the end of the day, I'm still Indian, I'm still Muslim. And just because I have had less of an, formative experience growing up, experiencing that culture, it doesn't mean that I'm any less of it. Like I will continue to be a part of that culture, like even if I tell you I'm not, I'm thinking of Rachel Dolezal, but let's not go there. And on the flip side, there are also parts of it that I find myself being very fortunate to be able to identify as a Malay in a lot of circumstances. not least in part, the fact that it's much easier to be a Malay Muslim in Singapore than it is to be an Indian Muslim for a lot of reasons. For some reason, like predominant idea that you have to be Malay to be Muslim. It's a very strange sentiment that people hold, or it's a very strange perception rather that people hold. But for some reason, it's very lasting and very ubiquitous in our culture, or society. I think in relation to my faith, there's also just a lot more opportunity for me to belong as a Malay Muslim as compared to as an Indian Muslim. So for example, one of the reasons why I've just kind of veered away from Muslim societies growing up until I reached uni was because of the fact that it was kind of difficult for me to identify as an Indian Muslim. This also brings me back to when I was in kindergarten. And the Indian kids never saw me as one of them. And in Malay class, they thought of me as Indian as well. So I just never really belonged in any of these spaces. But there are a lot of mixed feelings and experiences belonging in both of those spaces and belonging in the Indian Malay Muslim space. That in itself is also a very unique experience that can be kind of hard to articulate unless you yourself belong in it. So, yeah.
So, have you ever felt any issues surrounding your appearance as an Indian Muslim?
My grandma is very into fairness, as a lot of Indians are, like, you know, slathering on Fair and Lovely and everything. But I think other than my grandma, a lot of my family was very body positive with regards to color. Although a lot of us were like treated differently for color, like being in public school and stuff. But for me in madrasa, I didn't feel too much of like alienation as being a person of color because I was surrounded by brown people. So yeah.
Issues? No. It's just that I guess people will just be shocked lah. When I say I'm Chinese Muslim, they'll be shocked lah. Yeah, that's all. But I don't think thankfully, alhamdulillah, I've not been judged. So yeah.
When people first meet me, it's not uncommon for me to get asked what my race is. So, you know, like sometimes people automatically assume I'm Malay, but there are people who are like, what are you exactly? A bit offensive to like phrase it that way, but you know, like I guess it's the curiosity is valid. I think I've also been lucky to grow up in an environment where I was given a lot more freedom to experiment with the way that I look and present myself. So, with regards to like my Indian identity, I don't think I have had any particularly nasty or even like, you know, great experiences about it. Okay, but one comes to mind, which is that last year, I have a group of Indian Muslim friends who I hang out with, and they definitely identify with the Indian parts of their identity a lot more than I do. And we were hanging out last year, and the fact came to light that I've never worn a lingga in my life. So they took me to Tekka, and we went to try on lingas. And when I tried on my first one, I just started bawling in front of the mirror. There are certain ways where you can reconnect with your culture that just resonate a lot more with different people. You know, obviously, some people resonate better with food, some people resonate better with music, some people resonate better with fashion. That was just one way that I did not expect my cultural identity to hit me so hard. When I wore that first lingga and I looked at myself in the mirror, I was thinking about how my late grandfather was not able to see this. My late grandfather, by the way, is not like my biological grandfather. He was my adoptive grandfather, but he was a very significant figure in the Indian Muslim community. So he was one of the heads of Malabar Mosque, some of you know. So I don't think in his lifetime I was able to kind of, you know, explore that part of my identity very much. But I thought of him when I wore that lingga. I was also thinking about how I was 22 at the time I tried the Lingga, and just all of these years of not having been able to explore my culture, to or to not have been able to put as much thought as I would have liked into my culture. It was just a very emotional moment. And that is not to say that I was guilty for never having explored it. It's just that, sometimes the thought doesn't cross your mind until you have an experience that makes you think, like wakes you up to that reality. But yeah, I think that made me more aware about how my appearance relates back to my racial religious identity.
So, as a Malay speaking Indian, right, do you know of any non-Malay speaking Indians? And would you say that their experiences differ greatly?
I do think that my non-Malay speaking Indian friends are a lot more traditionally Indian, as I would put. The Malay Muslims, some of them go to weekend madrasas in the mosque, but like the Indian Muslims go to IMSA. So like even that, like how they learn the religion is like different compared to how I learned the religion, although I went to full-time madrasa, so how I learned the religion is different from a lot of people.
I definitely feel so, yes. Because when you can, I think this happens a lot even till now. Like, whenever you're in a Muslim group of friends, right? They tend to forget and start speaking Malay. And if you are non-Malay speaking Muslim, then sometimes you unknowingly, unintentionally, you'll be lost in the conversation already because they'll just start speaking Malay. Then, or like some 1-2 words, they'll be using Malay, mix it with English, And sometimes they won't understand the words because they completely don't speak Malay, So yeah, definitely their experience will be different. What I saw some people do to cope is they put in the cautious effort to learn Malay instead, so that they can fit in, Although that shouldn't be the case unless you want to. But yeah, that's what some of my friends do.
Yes, actually, it's quite a different experience, I think. I do know some non-Malay speaking Indians. Some of my cousins, in fact, are non-Malay speaking Indians. Like they took Tamil growing up and everything. And some of my friends as well, not necessarily Tamil, but like other languages and stuff. I actually even know of a relative who took Chinese, which sometimes happens. And I think the experiences differs mainly because I think in Singapore, school is it's like the most important place for you to kind of create your social circles. And because of that, by means of circumstance, I guess, what language or what mother tongue you end up taking tends to become formative in terms of the groups of friends you hang out with.
Definitely, I think there would be a difference because from my personal experience, I'm a non-Malay speaking Indian Muslim. So growing up, my experiences were very different, and having made friends that are in the same boat as me, they really resonate with certain things. And so what this shows is that really there is a difference, and I would say the challenges do exist, but alhamdulillah, there has been much progress made as a society, as a community, and that is definitely worth mentioning. One of the recent incidences, I would say, that comes to mind is Eid prayers or Hari Raya prayers, where usually there's also a sermon before that. And growing up, I really remembered that it was literally in Malay all the time, like to the community mosque that I used to frequent with my family. And I always wish I knew what the imam was saying, without having to go and download online the full PDF, It would be nice. But alhamdulillah, there has been a very pleasant surprise I see that after the masjids opened up after COVID, the first time we actually had our mass prayers, I saw, alhamdulillah, that they had screens and they had like English translation as the imam or the cleric was
going through the sermon. So I thought, alhamdulillah, that's a really nice, very inclusive initiative and progress. So definitely we should highlight the progress that is made, but also recognize that there are places for improvement and there are genuine concerns that affect a portion of the Muslim community. And I feel like as Muslims, we are being told to feel for one another. We have a certain degree of responsibility towards our fellow Muslim brothers and sisters, and of course over humanity.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the reality, I use the word reality a lot, okay. The reason for that, I think, is because Islam here is very closely linked to Malay as a language. So if we want to talk about, families, Indian families will have their children study Malay so that they can, practice the religion more effectively or more with greater ease than studying an Indian language, for example, or Indian dialect, for example. It's also much easier for us to integrate into more Muslim communities if we spoke Malay as compared to if we spoke Indian languages or dialects.
Have you ever felt the need to present yourself in a way to appease both the ethnically Indian and Malay communities? And would you say that they are different?
I think in the same way that we assimilate or we present a different part of ourselves to different groups of friends, different communities that we are in, is the same way that I would present myself differently to my non-Malay Indian Muslim friends, non-Malay speaking Indian Muslim friends, and the Malay assimilated Muslim speaking friends. Sorry, that was not correct English, but yes. I think I don't present myself totally differently. It's just that there are different things that these communities would relate to. So obviously I would talk about these things more often. Say I wanted to talk about certain types of cuisines, maybe the more Malay assimilated ones would be they do eat Indian food, but they're not super into it. And then my other Indian friends are they're really into rasam and things like that. Yeah.
Yes. So I do have a switch in me that when I'm with the Chinese, then there are different, there's Arshad 1, 2, 3. So I have to change. So but maybe that's just me because I said, I can vibe to the different races. So I do feel the need to switch so that I can feel more included into their community. Then I guess I just the way you speak, the language, the way you speak, then it's all in the language, it's the way you speak and the way your body language, I think it changes. Yeah.
If there's a message you would like to send out to Indian Muslims in their community, particularly those who are struggling with their identity, what would it be?
I would just say don't be afraid to embrace who you are. Your future self will be very grateful that you learn to embrace every side of you sooner rather than later. Yeah. So, and I would draw the parallel of embracing your Indianness the way you would embrace your faith, because only you know your own level of iman. Only you know your faith, right? No one else. I mean, you've heard the phrase being used wrongly in a lot of situations, don't judge me, only God knows how I really am, right? Yeah, if you use it in a wrong, in a not so great context, that is not great. But if you use it in the right context, ultimately, only you know your own level of faith, and only God knows. So, it's a very similar concept as well. Just as how, only you and God understand truly your level of iman. Same thing in terms of your Indianness. It might be two separate things in a lot of other ways, but this is the one thing that, share. It both has similar. It's both similar. Yeah.
Nobody can tell you who you are. Your experiences speak for themselves. And so just embrace that.
So are there any issues in the Muslim community that you wish should be addressed?
I guess it would be nice if we could all be represented together because I know you watch the news, we are often when they talk about the Muslim community, they label us as a Malay Muslim community. I mean, it would be nice if we are all represented as just one Muslim community instead of having the word Malay. Just drop that word, and so that people will know also that we are a mix of various races. Yeah, regardless Malay, Indian, or even the others. Yeah. So whenever there's news of good news, then we know that okay, I am part of that community too. Yeah. So.
Like religious, like the accessibility to religious education in Singapore, because like personally from my own personal experience, like if I were to source like local religious educations, I do struggle to find something that caters to a language that I can understand, because several centers or institutes that I've tried exploring, like unfortunately like some of the courses that I'm interested in, it's like delivered in Malay, and that is also because like the majority of the Muslims and also like maybe the certified asatizas, they could possibly also like teach well or like teach best in the language that they could have possibly learned from or learned in as well, right? So I just hope that maybe in the future, inshallah, like you could have a system where like religious education could be just more accessible to people of all ethnicities, and I feel like the best case scenario is to deliver it in English.
If I were to ask you, who are you? What would you say?
I would say I'm a hijabi, writer, loverholic, and poet.
I would say I'm Singaporean.
I'm Sarah, and I'm still figuring my life out.
I am an Indian Muslim that just prefers to identify as a Muslim, and I want to be seen as a Muslim. That's it. I'm Zubaida. I'm a Muslim, and I owe nobody an explanation for the cultures that I identify with.
Assalamualaikum everyone. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed the insights and experiences shared by our participants in this video. We wonder if you share any of the same sentiments as them. Do let us know in the comments down below and tell us the kind of content you would like to see from Dip and Deep in the future. Inshallah, we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye!